Shockingly, 65 million girls are out of school globally. In parts of South Asia, only 1 in 4 girls attends primary school. It is estimated that of those girls who are enrolled at school, 100 million will drop out of school before they even complete their primary school education.
HDI in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asian countries is very low. This is somewhat due to the low literacy rate for women. The lack of education leads to a therefore high infant mortality rate. The women are held to a much lower standard than men and are expected to have boys rather than girls in India.
Gender gap for primary education is closing, but even if girls are getting a primary education, too few are making the leap to secondary school. In South Asia, fewer than half of the girls are in secondary school, and in sub-Saharan Africa, it's less than 1 in 3.
Girls' education has historically been a way in which populations have been marked as civilized or uncivilized, and modern or backwards. Women's education can show if a country is developed. As female education rises, fertility, population growth, infant and child mortality fall, and family health improves. The fact that these countries are periphery means that many are shackled to labor-intensive work of agriculture instead of education. And since men are held to much higher standards than women, the women are in charge of the agriculture.
In the 19th century, Southeast Asia's economic resources and strategic position between India and China led to an increasing European involvement. By the 1890s, the entire region was colonized by European countries. In some areas, women were recruited as cheap wage labor on plantations and in processing factories. Neocolonialism has left these countries to have an economic tie to Europe to this day. Importantly, the extremists represent their attacks as a continuation of their fight against what they perceive to be colonial and foreign influence. Mass schooling in Pakistan being a legacy of the British colonizers who displaced local indigenous traditions and the systems of learning.
Leaders focused on political independence, but educated women were equally concerned with divorce, domestic abuse, and the financial responsibilities of their fathers. For the most part, women accepted the male argument that female concern should be delayed until after the independence was attained from the colonizers.
There are many different reasons for the lack of women education. Sharia law is a big factor towards the gender gap. It is an Islamic legal system which provides an Islamic alternative to secular models of governance. Women in societies governed by Sharia must get permission from a male relative, usually a husband or father, before seeking employment, requesting a loan, starting a business, or travel. These women have far fewer rights than women in other portions of the world. In many countries in the region, women must obtain permission to education, marriage, or regular things like being able to drive.
Yousafzai, as a child, became an advocate for girls' education, which resulted in the Taliban issuing a death threat against her. On October 9, 2012, a gunman shot Malala while she was traveling home from school. Even to this day, women and men do not receive the same education rights, and the Taliban is a big reason for this in Pakistan. The gender gap in education acts as a centrifugal force in these countries and continues to create cultural barriers between the genders.
The stimulus diffusion of Western society ideas and beliefs about the equality of women and men's education is a factor that is leading to the equality of the genders in the region of interest. This converges the otherwise diverse cultures.
The world switches to service economies. The periphery countries in this region are still performing primary economic activities. The drilling for oil and other extractions of raw materials is mainly done by men. Women and their daughters work at home by cooking, cleaning, or taking care of the young children. This means that girls can't get an education because they have to do chores.
Issue with girls' education takes place in Afghanistan, where terrorists will stop at nothing to keep Afghan girls from receiving an education. The terrorists threw grenades on an opening day of a girls' school, and 100 girls were killed. There are at least 150 documented attacks on schools and hospitals in Afghanistan just last year. The majority were attributed to armed groups opposed to girls' education.
One reason for not sending girls to school is because of the poor economic condition in countries. They are used at home to assist the family in mainly agricultural practices. The consequences of women not going to school include less maternal deaths. If all mothers completed primary education, maternal deaths would be reduced by 2/3, saving 98,000 lives. More women going to school result in better health for them and their children. If all women had a primary education, 1.7 million children would be saved from stunting from malnutrition. If more girls went to school, there would be less childbirths at a young age, which would further prevent a girl from getting at least a primary education. 10% fewer girls would become pregnant under 17 years in sub-Saharan Africa and South and West Asia if they all had a primary education. having a secondary education prevents 2/3 of the child marriages worldwide.
These issues with unequal education is happening in South Asia, mainly in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. Malala Yousafzai is a women's rights activist who is working to stop the inequality of the genders. She received the Nobel Peace Prize and was the youngest to do so. She is one of many women who have spoke out against the inequality of women. She began the Malala Fund in 2012 and has since been enabling girls to complete 12 years of safe education. The fund amplifies the voice of girls and empowers them to take the next step in having an education that will benefit them throughout their lives.
Issues in South Asia represent a complex challenge. There has been a recognition of the problem across the region. In most countries, women have experienced improved access to services. However, despite the recent economic growth and changing social norms, dramatic gender inequalities persist in South Asia. Addressing the inequalities will require a voice from the women in political decision-making communities.
Gender stereotypes that favor males over females are often reinforced in school textbooks and are sometimes encouraged by religious teachings. For example, Buddhists still believe that rebirth as a woman rather than a man indicates that less merit was acquired in past lives. Although all Southeast Asian countries except Laos and Vietnam have signed the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women and have made advances promoting gender equality, other regions in Asia are struggling with the issue.
It's getting much better going into the future as supranational organizations and high-powered women are fighting for equality in education. More women are fighting to put their daughters in school, and at a primary school level, there's equality. People like Malala are advocating for women and getting their voices out there. More women are securing jobs in politics, which takes away from the overwhelming male voices. Countries like Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, and Uganda have all abolished school fees, which has led to a surge in enrollment.
But what do we do now? We raise domestic spending on education from 15 to 20% of national budgets, while giving priority to basic education. We integrate education as a key part of humanitarian responses to post-conflict and emergency situations. We eliminate school fees, particularly for low-income families. We offer free meals and basic health services at school to improve children's health, nutrition, and cognitive development. We ensure adequate teaching materials and distribute textbooks free of charge.